Welcome to the Geek Homeworld. I am your host, SavageTechman. We talk sci-fi, TV, movies, superheroes, and all from a geek perspective. You can find us on Blogger, Google+, Twitter, Facebook. We're everywhere. Join the Geek Homeworld. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another wonderfully exciting episode of the Geek Homeworld podcast. I'm your host, SavageTechman, and welcome. Well, on Good Friday of this year, we had Star Wars Celebration, the 40th anniversary of Star Wars, and it took place in Orlando. And to our surprise, one of the highlights was the Last Jedi teaser trailer. And we're about 8 months from the release at the time of this recording of Star Wars The Last Jedi, or Episode 8, if you're keeping track. So there were a lot of things that went on at the Star Wars Celebration. We'll do a breakdown of the trailer in just a minute. I know everybody's probably seen it a trillion times and can't wait till we get some more trailers. It's just going to be really, really wonderful. So looking forward to more trailers and more information. We'll be bringing it to you as we get a hold of it also. So let's just dive into Star Wars Celebration, the 40th anniversary of Star Wars. Kathleen Kennedy came out first, and she was introduced by Warwick Davis, who actually played the head of the Ewoks from Return of the Jedi. I've learned to appreciate the Ewoks over time, but they were never my favorite characters. But anyway, Warwick Davis, he did a wonderful job hosting the entire celebration. He shared a letter that he had written as an 11-year-old, and he was thanking George Lucas, and he wanted some certain toys, and they sent him the toys, and they showed a picture of that. And he's like, it just changed his life, and it was amazing. But anyway, it starts off with Kathleen Kennedy thanking all the fans, and thank the maker, as C-3PO would say. George Lucas came out, and he just talked about the origins of Star Wars, and, nothing new there, but there were some nice insights that I got from it, and he was just trying to make what he called like a Saturday matinee, and he just built upon a lot of mythological thoughts and feelings out there, and he was coming off of THX 1138, which has become a cult classic, but was not at all a hit at the time, and American Graffiti that did not so well. It did okay. Then he did Star Wars, and, the world changed. He said basically, first off, that he shouldn't really say this, but he's going to say it anyway. But his quote was, talking about Star Wars, quote, "It's a film for 12-year-olds. He said, this is what we stand for. You're about to enter the real world. And he talked about how it was to prepare basically 12-year-olds for the real world. And there's a 12-year-old inside of all of us in that case. And we're still loving what's coming out, from The Force Awakens to The Last Jedi, which we are so anticipating. And, seeing Carrie Fisher for the last time. They did, by the way, have a nice tribute to Carrie Fisher. Her daughter came out there, and she recited basically the Princess Leia, Obi-Wan, you're my only hope, the monologue, I guess you would say. They had Dave Filoni, who was the key guy for Star Wars The Clone Wars, which was awesome. And he said that he felt so lucky working with Lucas, and they would just change things. And he said the one thing that he took away from George Lucas was, quote, "Don't be afraid," end quote. And he said it was a very, wonderful experience. And they even had Liam Neeson show up in a video message in. I think the internet's going a little crazy thinking Jar Jar Binks has gone to the dark side, because that's what Liam Neeson said he was working on. He was honored to play Qui-Gon Jinn, but he's working on the Jar Jar Binks Goes to the Dark Side movie, and there's no such thing. But somebody out there is probably saying, I knew it. Jar Jar was the Sith Lord all along, and I've actually seen that. It's quite interesting. I've seen that on the internet. One of the highlights for me was seeing Hayden Christensen and Ian McDermott out there, Anakin Skywalker and Emperor Palpatine, who, was Chancellor Palpatine before that. And Ian McDermott is just such a great actor. And Hayden Christensen talked about how he made the little lightsaber sounds, and George Lucas would come up to him and say, stop making the sounds. We'll do that in post, we'll ADR that or something. But he found out later on that I think Obi-Wan was doing it too, and so a lot of the other actors on there. So it was funny. And they talked about the scene where Palpatine was all in the offices, and one of my favorite monologues, and what Ian McDermott said was probably the longest monologue that was ever in any of the Star Wars films, when they went to the opera. And he said, at the last minute, George says, let's not go to another office and have you and Anakin talk. And this is where he gave the famous, in episode 3, the speech of the path to the dark side, that he and Anakin, played by Hayden Christensen, they had that interchange right there at the opera. And with the opera, the music was so ominous. I really love that. And, the dark side is a pathway to abilities that some consider to be unnatural. Just love that. And I don't do it justice there, but anyway, one of the greatest things there was Samuel L. Jackson, and I love Samuel L. Jackson. And he showed up via video. He said how great it was being in the Star Wars community. And I want to read this quote for you. And I love this. Samuel Jackson, or Mace Windu, in the trilogy there, the prequels, he said, quote, "We know Jedi can fall from incredible heights and survive. I'm not dead," end quote. And he really riled the fans up. Hey, let's get a groundswell on this. And he said, quote, "Mace Windu is awaiting his return. Let's make it happen. See you soon on screen, I hope," end quote. And he did shout out to Kathleen Kennedy. He said, all you got to do is call me. I will do it. And so, yes, I'd love to see Mace Windu show up. I wanted Ewan McGregor to come back in as Obi-Wan. That would be interesting. Anything's possible. Hopefully we'll see something like that occur. They talked to Anthony Daniels, who played C-3PO, Peter Mayhew, who played Chewbacca, and Billy D. Williams, who you don't see a lot or hear a lot from, who played Lando Calrissian. And they were just talking about different things, and they were talking about, Anthony Daniels was talking to George Lucas, and he was talking about all these different faces that he had, and how that they lined them all up in what would be the face of C-3PO, and he talked about how he had to go through all this molding and clay and all that to make the bodysuit or whatever, that the coverings, as C-3PO would say. And when they did the faceplate, of all the ones he disliked, that's the one that George Lucas picked, which I thought was so funny. And they had a lot of good things to say. One thing that Peter Mayhew said about Carrie Fisher, who, is passed, of course, he said, quote, "She's a hell of a rebel, but she's also a beautiful princess." And there was a funny thing George Lucas talked about. He had this dog that would ride with him in his car, and how he came up with the idea of Chewie as having a dog is like the co-pilot of the Millennium Falcon, which, evolved into Chewbacca. So kind of interesting there. And then we had all of the characters come out that are still around, but we had Mark Hamill and Harrison Ford come out, and that was just awesome. And they were just going over different things, and they were both kind of getting George about, talking about, you got to get and I don't remember the exact quote, and I should know this, but you got to get the coordinates from the Navi computer to such and such. And they're like, you can write it that way, but that's not how you speak it, which further proves that, yes, George Lucas, as great as he is, he's the idea guy, but I don't think he writes dialogue that well. That's one reason why episode 1, the acting was so cardboard, but it's kind of Hayden Christensen's fault too. So, but I don't want to say anything too bad about Lucas. He did, when he came out, that people were going, Lucas, 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 Lucas. now at this point, let's talk about the Last Jedi teaser trailer. And finally, the number one thing on everybody's mind is Luke going to say something? And of course, we know he would. So he did speak, and it starts off where he just says, "Breathe. Just breathe. Now reach out. What do you see?" And he's talking to Rey, and then they show Rey's hand on the ground, and you start to see like pebbles and dirt start to rise up in the air, which kind of reminded me. I know they weren't trying to make any kind of comparison to, but at the end of Batman versus Superman, where Superman's casket's there, and then all of a sudden you start to see the dirt rise up a little bit, it was almost that same effect. I know they weren't trying to do the same thing, but it reminded me of that. So Luke says, "Well, what do you see, Rey?" And she says she sees light. And you see Princess Leia, or General Organa. You see her, like the camera's behind her, and you kind of see her over like by a control panel there. And then you see a part of it where Rey's doing some training, and it's a long shot. So in the distance, you see a lightsaber moving, and they got the crowd excited, of course. Also, of course, seeing Carrie Fisher is going to be so bittersweet. And then we had, of course, Kylo Ren. You see a close-up of his lightsaber pretty much sticking in the camera, and he's not got a helmet on, which is important. I think, he's got the scar, if you think about it, from The Force Awakens, which kind of like is what Anakin had. And I'm sorry, just to backtrack a little bit, when they showed Carrie Fisher that was the light, Rey says she saw darkness, and it looked like Darth Vader's helmet was like crushed even more. You know how burnt out it was, but it was actually smoking. So maybe Kylo just comes in and just a fit of rage and, "You failed me, grandfather." I don't know. Who knows? We'll find out. So obviously Kylo's back in, and then we see, and may I go a little bit out of order in this, but you see in the teaser trailer, you see Finn in what looks like a medical unit, and you remember he pretty much got slashed up his back there. And then Rey, that's when she jumped in after, Kylo Ren did that to him, and she is able to get them to safety in the Millennium Falcon with Chewbacca. So then we see BB-8 and Poe Dameron running down a hallway, and it looks like things are like a war is impending. We see a shot of Luke with C-3PO in the burned out kind of village, and I imagine this is when Kylo, and it looks like Captain Phasma comes through the crowd, so this is probably a flashback to when Kylo Ren, basically goes through, possibly a flashback, or could be in the current time, but I think it's a flashback. And this is when Kylo Ren goes a little ape shit and, kills all the Jedi. Then you see a wonderful, flyby, a TIE fighter, looks like it's attacking the Millennium Falcon, and it flies by. Then you see this little desert part, mountains that drop to a desert floor, and all these ships, and they've got red smoke coming out of them. And one of them drops and kind of hits the level there, the ground, but then stabilizes and then starts putting out the red smoke like the rest of them. We also see, which looks like a bunch of rebel cruisers and stuff above a planet there fighting, and it ends where Luke Skywalker says, and it looks like he's exiting the cave or something there. Probably, definitely on that island, I imagine. And he says, "I know only one truth. It's time for the Jedi to end." And definitely not what anybody was expecting. So we'll see what The Last Jedi really means. But I'm telling you, it's an exciting trailer. There were some mixed reviews on it because a lot of fans were expecting more, but we kind of know where this story's going, but we're hoping to get more out of this and to see more things that we haven't seen. So there wasn't too much in the trailer that really surprised us other than, Luke saying the Jedi have to end. And there was a point towards the beginning of the trailer when he's talking to Rey that it's after she says she sees light and she sees darkness, and then they kind of show her in the distance training with her lightsaber and with Luke a little ways off. And he said there's so much more. So, and there's even a part where she sees like these books that are kind of highlighted by this nice beam of light that comes in, I assume, to the cave or wherever, this old Jedi temple that, or the first Jedi temple or whatever, it's old, or the remains of one where Luke is living on that island. And Rey, she grabs one of the books and then it shows like the lightsaber thing, and she talks about the balance. And he's like, there's so much more. So apparently Luke has found a way beyond good versus evil. I don't know how there's going to be balance if there are no Jedi, and to balance the Sith, I'm not sure how that works. We're all going to find out, I know, in about 8 months, and we cannot wait. So what did you think of the trailer? What did you feel were the high points, the low points? What were you expecting? What did you see? What did you not see? Let us know at Geek Homeworld. Please give us your feedback on that, and we'll talk about it. We're going to be talking about Star Wars. We always love some Star Wars here on the podcast, and we're going to be talking about it. So anyway, thank you for listening to this episode. Thank you for making our podcast the success it's been. Each episode growing by leaps and bounds, it seems, in our listenership, and that interactivity is what's wonderful about our community, and we're geeks just like you here. So thank you very much for listening to this episode, and check out the website geekhomeworld.libsyn.com. Thank you, Libsyn, for letting us host there. If you haven't checked out Libsyn, you should. And you can check out our previous episodes. Check out our back catalog there. A lot of good stuff. A lot of different genres of geekiness there for you on the website at geekhomeworld.libsyn.com. You can go over to our Facebook page, find the link here on our Libsyn site. Check out our blog page at geekhomeworld.blogspot.com. So go over there and on Blogger and check out our extra content there. So thank you very much for listening. This is SavageTechman, aka Ed, and I'm signing off. May the Force be with you. Thanks for listening to another episode of the Geek Homeworld podcast with your host, SavageTechman. You can find us on Libsyn, Google+, follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook, listen to us on iTunes, see us on YouTube, be part of our Mixler chats. Thank you. See you again on the Geek Homeworld podcast.